What's up guys, it's Nick here, and today we're going to do kind of a Doug DeMuro style video. We're going to talk about a bunch of different quirks and some unknown features about the E90, E92 BMWs. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is something that I thought was really cool. I had no idea that the car had it, but when I learned about it, I thought it was really cool once I started using the car. And it has to do with the radio here. So hopefully this will focus and you guys can see that. Alright, so basically down here, on the right below the climate controls, you have your normal preset buttons 1 through 6 right there. So that's standard for pretty much every car. But what makes them pretty cool on this one is if you look, as I put my finger without pressing them but just kind of scrolling across them, as I put my finger on the different ones, it actually pops up on the iDrive what that individual preset is set for, which is really cool. Now, I don't really use the presets a lot because I don't really use the radio a whole lot, but it's pretty cool if you have satellite radio. I don't pay for the subscription, but a lot of people like that, and you can program your different stations into there. And the other really cool thing about it is you can actually program functions into those buttons. So instead of doing like a normal radio station, if you look, my number 1, as I put my finger on the number 1, it shows up on the screen, it says control display. So basically what I've done is I've gone in and I've programmed that button to do a function, and when I click on it, the control display turns off. I can click it again and it's back, and that's something that I programmed into that button. Normally, if I wanted to turn off this display, if it was nighttime or something like that, I would have to go down here to the iDrive controller. You hit option. Once you hit option, the switch off control display screen will show up off on the side, and then you can select that. So that's just a little bit of a quicker, easier, faster way to do that, and there's a bunch of different things that you can program into there, whether it be calling a specific person or going through different settings in the iDrive. All right, next thing up, still relating to kind of the climate control area over here. So if you look, these are the climate control buttons, and this button here says all, and basically what that is that's a sync button. So this car has dual climate control, one for the driver's side, one for the passenger side, and if you want to sync them, you just hit all and it'll default to whatever the driver's side temperature is set at. However, if you know anything about these cars, the pre-LCI, this is a later version, so it's an LCI, but the pre-LCI, instead of having that all button, one of the kind of quirks about the earlier cars is that would say rest. And a lot of people didn't know what that meant, but basically what that does is on a cold day, after you've been driving a lot and the car's warmed up, if you need to run into the grocery store, if you're stopped at the gas station to pump some gas, you can park the car, turn it off, and hit that rest button, and it'll actually open up the vents and let some of the warm engine air into the car and circulate it around the interior of the car to keep the car nice and warm while you're outside, but you'll be right back. So it's a really nice feature, and a lot of people just assume that because that button is an all button now, that they got rid of it on the LCI BMWs, but they actually didn't. It's actually just built into the iDrive. So if we go into the iDrive here and we scroll down to settings, and then we go to climate, activate parked car vent. There it is, right up at the top. You would just select that, the vents will open up, and your car will be nice and warm for you when you get back to it. While we're in here on the screen, there's actually another cool thing that I'll talk about right now. It's kind of grayed out because the car's not on, but you can see there that it says activate timer 1, activate timer 2. So that's a really cool function for warm days in the summertime when say you get out of work at the same time every day, and you always get out to your car and it's been sitting in the sun and it's just baked out there and the interior is just smoking hot. You can set one of these timers, and you usually set it for about a half hour before you'll get out. So say you get out at 5 o'clock, you set that timer for 4:30. At 4:30, the climate control will actually kick on without you having to do anything. You're still inside at work or whatever. The climate control will kick on, and it'll start circulating some exterior air into the car and pulling out some of the interior air, and it actually works pretty well. I've used it a handful of times, and each time it cools down the car relatively well for still having the windows up, and it gets some fresh air in there, and it's a cool feature. All right, so now we're going to talk about something with the car key. If you look at the car key here, you'll notice that there's the unlock button, which is this one here. The BMW emblem is actually the lock button, and then this button says the trunk button. So with that, you'll notice that there's no alarm button, and I kind of ended up learning this the hard way, but the alarm button is actually built in to the trunk button, and it's kind of confusing because when you click the trunk button, like here, I'll show you here, I'm clicking it and the trunk isn't opening up. Doesn't matter if I click it once, if I click it twice, or whatever it is, the trunk wasn't opening up. So when I first got the car, I kind of thought maybe the key was broken or something like that. But actually what it ended up being is, to operate the trunk, you have to hold down the trunk button for a very specific amount of time. Here, I'll show you that. So you'll see there that the trunk popped open, and it's kind of like a long press. But you have to be careful, because since that trunk button also doubles as the alarm button, if you hold down that button for just like a half second too long, your car alarm's gonna start going off. So for me, I kind of tend to default to just going into the car and pressing the trunk release button from there, because I tend to set the alarm off quite a bit when I'm trying to use the key. So this next one is something that, if you know much about these cars, the E90, E92 generation BMW, you've probably heard before, but there is no actual physical dipstick on this car. And when these cars first came out in 2006 and people started figuring that out, man, the traditionalists were pissed. They were pretty upset about it. But instead of a physical dipstick, which I would prefer as well, you actually have to do it through either the gauge cluster, or if you have an iDrive model, you can do it through the iDrive screen. So to check the oil level on these cars, you go into the iDrive, you go down to vehicle info down here, you click it, then you go to vehicle status, and then that'll bring you to a couple different screens you can go to. One of them is the tire pressure monitoring system, stuff like that, service, check control, all sort of stuff like that. And one of the screens is the oil level screen, and you'll see here that it still says measuring oil level, and that's basically because however the system works, the oil level sensor that's down in the oil pan, it actually doesn't work, or I guess it only works when the car is warmed up. So you have to drive the car a good amount before you're able to get a reading. And you'll see here down on the gauge cluster, my car is almost warmed up. And I've been driving for a good while. It's been idling for a little while I've been sitting here filming this video, but still, oh, you know what? There it is. It just popped up. So it's telling me that my oil level's good. It's just below the max mark, which is perfect. So that's good. But yeah, you have to go through that process every time you want to check your oil. And FYI, these cars take quite a while to warm up. You got to drive them pretty far distance for a little while, especially on days like today. It's 30 degrees outside. Car takes forever to warm up. Now, I myself would definitely prefer a manual dipstick. I think it's just easier and simpler. It's one less thing to fail, but this isn't the worst system in the world. However, in my mind, the biggest drawback for it is when you're doing oil changes. So I do all my oil changes myself, and I have to be really careful and really mindful of how much oil is coming out of the car, and I measure it, so I put exactly that amount of oil back in the car, because I can't just dump oil in there, check the dipstick, see how much it is. If I need to add some, I add some. I have to make sure that the right amount of oil is in there, so I can then go take the car for a drive, let it warm up, hope that the oil level is right and it's not low, and then it'll tell me whether I need to add more, or if it's good, or whatever it is. But yeah, it's kind of tough doing that oil change, because you don't have the peace of mind of knowing that the oil level is correct before you actually even start the car and start driving it. All right, next up, we're going to talk about this little guy down here, the turn signal. Now, this is another one that you might have heard of already, but for a little while, BMW kind of tried to want to reinvent how the turn signal worked, and they put it in pretty much all of their models, and a lot of people hated it. I don't mind it so much. I think it works pretty good, but I'll kind of show you what they did here. Basically what happens is no matter what you do with the turn signal, the lever here always returns to center. So if I push it down, you can see that the indicator is on, but as soon as I did it, it doesn't stay down. It goes right back to center. Same thing on the other side. Push it up, goes right back to center, turn indicator stays on. Now they will cancel out the same way that a normal turn signal will, once you straighten the wheel out after making a turn and all that sort of good stuff. But people have a kind of a hard time grasping that it's always going to be in the middle, and then you kind of run into these situations where it'll be on and then you want to manually turn it off and you hit it the other way and then your other blinker goes on and people get confused by it. But I don't know, I've learned to kind of get used to it, and it's nice to always know where exactly it is, so it's there when you want to use it. The other thing is that it's a kind of a two-part turn signal, so if you're like changing lanes or something like that, you can just tap it down and it'll blink 3 times, just like that. 3 times blink, and then it turns off automatically. Or if you push it down and then push it through the second click, then it'll stay on like your normal turn signal would. And kind of the trick to get used to it is when you push it all the way down and it's staying on, if you want to manually turn it off, just tap it in that same direction and it goes off. It's really not bad once you get used to it. And like I said, I kind of like it because I always know where the stock is at. Last thing that we're going to talk about today is the famous seatbelt device that hands you the seatbelt. And this is another one that you might have heard of already, but I wanted to mention it because I think it's a cool feature when it works, which a lot of times, as you might know, it doesn't really work the way it's designed to. But when people get in the car and it hands them their seatbelt, it's pretty cool, and people usually make a comment talking about how neat it is and how they like it. Basically the way it works is you open the door, you hop in the car, and when you close the door, this arm back here will extend, and look at that, hands you the seatbelt, so it's right here, it's easy to grab. So this one's going to be specific to the coupe models. The 4-door E90s have just your standard seat belts because you don't really need this. But on the coupe, since the doors are so long and you got to have room to get somebody in the back seat, the front seat belts are so far back that it'd be a pain to try and reach all the way back there and get it every time that you wanted to get into the car. Now, E92 owners will kind of make fun of these things because although they're cool, they tend not to work very well. And the reason for that being is it's usually not so much that these arms stop working, but it's usually that the seat belts kind of get worn out. So you'll see kind of the way this works is the arm comes out and it catches the seat belt on this little hook there. There it goes back in. And then it will kind of push it out from the middle of the seat belt. But you'll notice that I'm doing this on the passenger side of the car because on the driver's side of the car, the seat belt has been pushed by the arm so often that the actual fabric of the belt has kind of worn out, and it's a lot flimsier than it used to be. So when that arm comes out on the driver's side of this car, the softness of the seatbelt causes it to just kind of slip off of it, and it doesn't really work, and I have to reach back and grab the seatbelt the way you normally would have to. But what I've heard is kind of a cool fix for that is you can actually take an iron or like a girl's hair straightener, and you take either the iron or the hair straightener. With the hair straightener, you would just clamp the seatbelt between the two tongs of the straightener, and you kind of iron it out. And apparently that causes the belt to kind of regain some of its rigidity, and after that the arms are supposed to work. I haven't tried it out yet, but could be worth trying to do. All right, so that about covers everything that I had thought of to talk about for this car. I know there's a bunch of other videos kind of about similar topics on this car that have already been made, but I tried to think of a few that I hadn't seen already published online. So hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned next week for another video. All right, guys, peace. Damn, dude, you know what you look like? You look like when I'm out walking my dog and he does his business and I gotta pick it up, put it in a bag, get rid of it, throw it away. The face that I make when I sometimes catch a whiff of what he's done there, that's like the face that you wear all the time. Wait, here it is, ready? Yeah, it's not good, man.